All right. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Uh, I don't know what Gary's showing you. If you're watching, he has a really blasphemous message on the screen. If you aren't watching, it says Thanksgiving food is overrated. Um, so be sure to tell him when you see him how incorrect he is. But we've got playoff football coming up. This is the Under the Lights podcast playoff preview show this week. I'm Kyle Parmley, joined by Gary Lloyd. Gary, aside from your horrible food opinions, what's got you excited for football this week?
For football, I mean, just that it's Thanksgiving week, it's Black Friday this Friday, and we've got games to cover. Like I'd rather spend Black Friday on a sideline than in a line, outside of Best Buy or J.C. Penney or who knows where else, just to get a little bit off of something we really don't need. I would much rather be on a sideline. So what's got me excited about football is just that we have football to cover.
Yeah, maybe some people, some husbands are suffering through lines while they listen to this. So if that's the case, you are welcomed, and we're glad that you're listening. So Gary, we've only got two games to really talk about. We'll touch on all the 6A and 7A games a little bit, but let's start with the 7A game that we'll be covering. I'll be heading down to Alabaster on Friday night. Hewitt-Trussville making the trip to Thompson. Hewitt-Trussville's first trip to the state semifinals. Gary, you've got all those dates and years memorized. I know, first time since, last time was whatever. So, I mean, go ahead and tell us, like, how historic is it for Hewitt-Trussville to be playing in the semifinals Friday night?
Last time they were in any semifinal game, any classification, was 1996. So they haven't played in a 7A semifinal. That's been around since 2014. The last time they were there was 96. And the only time they've played in a state championship game was 1992. And they lost to, I think it was Lee Montgomery. And I think it was like a 14-0 game. So They've only been to one state championship and they didn't score a point. So a lot on the line here for Hewitt-Trussville. And can anybody, get past Thompson?
That's the question. I'll just be honest. Based on the first time these two teams played, Hewitt ain't that team. That was ugly. The first time that they played, Thompson visited Hewitt-Trussville and just spanked them. I mean, it was. Yeah. It was a pretty. You could tell after the game that head coach Josh Floyd was pretty beat up about it. I mean, the word he used was embarrassing, and that's kind of what it felt like it was. So I gotta feel like Hewitt-Trussville, as well as they played the first 2 weeks in the playoffs, plus, getting over a lot of these humps, like they hadn't gotten past the second round in the last 6 trips to the playoffs, and they hadn't done this, they hadn't done that. They've gotten over the big games, like that all that stuff. I feel like they've exercised all of those demons. Now it's time to just play the game. You're in a sense, you're playing with house money at this point. So if anything's going to change, this seems to be the time for Hewitt to be able to do that. Now, they're going to Thompson to take on a team that hasn't shown much weakness in the playoffs so far. They really put it on Vestavia in the second half last week. Quarterback Trent Seaborn's playing great. The defense is playing lights out. Hewitt's going to have to play their A game and get some help from Thompson. But I don't know what you what did you observe from Hewitt last week that gives you some reason to believe that they might be able to hang around in this game, that it's a little bit different than the way that first game went?
Yeah, I think it's going to be that defense. We talked a lot in recent weeks about how well Hoover was playing. How they started versus how they seemed to keep, they were finding this in the running game. They were finding that on defense where they were improving. And, head coach Josh Floyd kind of said it after the game. We were talking a little bit, and, he didn't say it in a way that was like, oh, everybody was talking about Hoover. It wasn't that. He was talking about how, we've been doing kind of the same thing. We've got a lot of the same guy. Jackson Melton's running the ball, Peyton Floyd's scoring every which way. but he's like, our defense, our offense has gotten sharper. We didn't go from 1-4 to 5-5, whatever, but we've been making those improvements week to week as well. And so I think that's kind of what you look for from Hewitt-Trussville. I don't see a 40-14 game here. I don't know that I see Hewitt-Trussville winning the game. Peyton Floyd did say that after the game to me. He was like, no one's going to pick us. That's fine. That's okay. And I'm like, well, you're probably right. But this matchup couldn't be any more different than the game they just played against Hoover. Hoover can't really throw the ball. And Hewitt-Trussville had a lot to do with that, but I think Hewitt-Trussville knew that was Hoover's weak spot. There was the ability to do things down the field. Thompson's a little bit the opposite of that. They can fling it. Trent Seaborn can fling it. He's got some awesome receivers, and it's not just that every now and then they hit you with a 60-yard bomb. It's that he's throwing for 250, 350 yards, and his completion percentage is out of this world. I mean, you mentioned it earlier in the week that at one point in that game against Vestavia, you had him, 9 of 9 to start, something like that, and the ball just isn't hitting the turf. So I think the key for Hewitt-Trussville is going to remain that secondary, and can you give your offense a chance to move the ball on Thompson? You're going to have to, find a way to put some pressure on Trent Seaborn. Don't let him sit comfortable in that pocket. But at the same time, when he does get rid of the ball, don't give up the big play. That's a tall task. I mean, that's a lot to ask of any defense, but Hewitt-Trussville is going to have to find a way to limit those possessions, to limit those big plays, and then when they have the ball, capitalize. Methodically move the ball down the field as best you can against that Thompson defense, and you're going to have to get it in the end zone. So it's a lot to ask, but it's we say it all year. It's a cliche, but that's why you play the game, and we'll see what they have in store for Thompson and see if anybody can get by him.
Yeah, looking back on what happened in that 40-14 game earlier in the year. So even if Thompson jumps out to a 24-7 lead in that game, but Hewitt got right to the goal line and fumbled the ball away right before the half. And it felt to me in that moment that if they score that possession, it's a 10-point game at the break, that game turns a lot differently. But they went in down 17, and it felt like they were mentally defeated, and they came out and Thompson finished it off. So you're going to have to – it's just kind of the same thing we talked about with Vestavia is if you're going to beat a team like Thompson, you have to do what Clay-Chalkville did earlier in the year. They didn't turn the ball over. They didn't make silly mistakes. They didn't go for fourth down deep in their own territory and not get it. Stuff like that you just cannot do if you want to win one of these games. So luckily for Hewitt, they've got a senior quarterback who's seen it all. He's playing great. He's he's steering the ship. And they've got as good a chance as they can reasonably expect to have. I mean, they know they're going to have to play their A game, which they didn't the first time these two teams played. So we'll see. There's no, a lot of times you hear coaches talk about they enjoy playing on the road because you don't have to worry about anything else except getting on the bus and going to play football. And that's what Hewitt's going to have to do on Friday night. We'll see if they can pose a challenge.
Yeah, and I think you made a good point about kind of playing with house money a little bit. Thompson, it's stuff for us to talk about. These guys see the game a lot differently than we do. But, in a way, all the pressure is on Thompson. You're the 4-time defending state champion. You won the region again. Everybody expects you to get there. Like we said, Hewitt-Trussville, none of these guys were alive the last time they were in the semifinals. I was still in elementary school. So, if they come in with house money, that maybe they don't feel that pressure as much. And I think a hot start is going to be key here.
Yeah,
I don't think you can let Thompson, get out of the gate, quickly. I think you probably need to score first and ride some of that momentum. But like you said, we'll see how it plays out. The game is 48 minutes, but it does feel like those first 5 or 6 are just incredibly important.
I agree. And in really minute facts and stats that don't matter, I've seen Hewitt-Trussville play 4 times this year. They are 2-2. The 2 wins I saw were both on the road, and the 2 losses I saw were both at home. So they're on the road, by the way. So we'll see how it shakes out. I'm excited to be there. Hope it's a good game. Uh, and then, Gary, I believe you're making the trek north to see Clay-Chalkville at Muscle Shoals. That's a long way away from here, but 2 undefeated teams. The thing that strikes me about, obviously Muscle Shoals is so far away from us, we don't see them. I haven't laid eyes on this team, but this program, they're in the playoffs every year, but Muscle Shoals has had these surges where they'll have teams that win double digits and get deep in the playoffs, and then it looks like they kind of rebuild things and they have another year or two stretch. Well, they're in one of those year or two stretch where they are just playing at an elite level, winning a ton of games. However, they hadn't played many. They ain't played a close game all year, hardly. But looking at their schedule, I can pretty well say this is by far the best team that Muscle Shoals has played all year in Clay-Chalkville. So I don't know how you see this one shaking out, but 2 unbeatens, it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a long way to go. I think this time of year, I mean, talent's going to win out, and whoever executes. But that's tough to be the team that has to make that bus ride 2 hours north and play in a place you haven't played, and hope that your fan base is riding right behind that bus. Um, you know, I'll be one of those people heading way up there, like you said, and getting to check off another stadium that I haven't been to. But on the field, I think Muscle Shoals quarterback's name is Cole Woods, and he seems like a guy that can do it through the air and on the ground. So, containing him, and then on the other side, Muscle Shoals containing Jalen Mbakwe. And two pretty good defenses. I say pretty good. Muscle Shoals has pretty good defense. Clay-Chalkville has an elite defense.
Yeah.
Both teams are offensively averaging more than 40 points a game this year. So I feel like this is another one of those games that it sounds obvious, but execution, don't turn the ball over. It feels to me, not obviously not seeing Muscle Shoals this year. I can't remember if you saw them last year against Mountain Brook in the semis.
I did. I was there at that game.
So it feels like a game that Jalen Mbakwe is maybe going to have to make something happen through the air. I don't know why. I don't know Muscle Shoals' scheme. I don't know any of that stuff. But it feels like, hey, if you want to stop Clay-Chalkville, stop Jalen Mbakwe from going crazy with his legs. It feels like a game where he's going to have to make something happen through the air. Excuse me. And I do know that, Clay-Chalkville against Mountain Brook the other night it seemed like they had quite a few pre-snap penalties on offense. Maybe Mountain Brook had a lot to do with that, showing them, something schematically on defense. But really going to have to clean that up. You don't want to play a game like this from behind the chains. So I think Clay-Chalkville is going to really need to bring their A game offensively. And we know what that defense has done and probably will do. So I expect a really knockdown, drag out kind of game from both teams. And I don't know how to we've done that a lot this year. This feels like a first 1 to 20 wins. That kind of thing. I don't know how to do that here. I mean, every game has its own personality. Like, I feel like I can say Hewitt-Trussville needs 30 to beat Thompson at least. But this game, I don't know. I mean, this feels like it could be another one of those random, like Mountain Brook, 17 to 13 games. But it feels like it could be 36-33, how Clay-Chalkville beat Thompson. So I think that's the fun of it for me going up there, is another game where, you flip a coin. Either team could win, and, the game could go, four different kind of ways. So I'm excited to get up there. I'm not excited for the fact that it'll be a little bit colder, being basically in Tennessee. But excited to check another one off the list, and not excited at all about Saturday morning after I drive back.
Yeah, I did it last year. It's all right. All right, so you mentioned the semifinal game last year. Mountain Brook beat Muscle Shoals. I think it was 28-7. Muscle Shoals scored first, and then Mountain Brook's defense just completely shut them down the rest of the way. Cole Gamble had another huge performance. He had a ton of those last year, especially in the second half of the season. And then this year, if you look at it, I mean, really, they beat James Clemens by 2 touchdowns, which James Clemens was a really good 7A team this year. And then their closest game is a 6-point win in double overtime against Hartselle. And this is back when Hartselle still had, their guys, starting quarterback, all that. So this is a team that can win 55-49. They can win 9-0. I think last week their game against Fort Payne was tight for a half, and then they just blew them out of the water.
Muscle Shoals, I think, was down at the half, weren't they? Wasn't it like 7-6, or it was something like
I remember seeing the score at one point and going, "Oh boy!" And then I looked back at the end and was like, "Wait a second, what?" So. Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, Clay-Chalkville's going to have to. It seems like this is a situation where Clay-Chalkville's going to have to find a way to win, like they did last week. And this is just, I mean, really tough path for Clay-Chalkville to get to the playoffs. I mean, or get to the state championship game, which is where they have every intention of being. But I mean, you look at it; they play a really good Mountain Brook team. They're playing a really good Muscle Shoals team. If they win, they're going to play a really good, probably Parker team. I mean, good gracious, to go through all that just to get to the state championship game where you're probably going to be playing Saraland or somebody. I mean, my goodness. If they get there, they will have absolutely earned every bit of it.
Yeah. Let's project this out just for a second. So help me with travel. Travel is my Achilles heel in playoff stuff. Parker is getting Gadsden City at home.
Yeah, so Clay-Chalkville would host Parker if it came to that.
And so they would get that rematch that they lost at home last year that sent shockwaves through the state. So there would be a lot of juju there if that's where we end up.
Right.
No doubt. This 6A bracket, these quarterfinals are just. I mean, there's not a game that I want to miss.
Right. Yeah. Well, I remember. When we previewed the whole playoffs, I told you Pike Road was a team that was going to make a run. Now, the thing about it, they were down.
I told you Ben Russell was the team that was going to make a run.
You're right. So last week against Spanish Fort, Pike Road was down 17-0. Come back and win 31-17. And then, Benjamin Russell, man, they scored a boatload of points against Hueytown. So they're rolling right now too. So let's talk about some of these 6A quarterfinals, like you mentioned. We just talked about Clay-Chalkville, Muscle Shoals. The winner of that game is going to get the winner of Parker and Gadsden City. This Parker team, they can win any way you want them to. They can score a ton of points. They can play a defensive struggle and are more than happy to do so. They scored fourth quarter to beat Oxford 21-14. And then this Gadsden City team grinded one out against a wounded Hartselle team, but one that's still that's a good win for Gadsden City. So they're playing each other. And then on the top half of the bracket, Benjamin Russell hosting Pike Road. That's going to be a ton of fun. And then Saraland hosting Hillcrest. Another battle of unbeatens. Hillcrest has been that number 3 team in 6A most of the year. I'm really interested to see how this goes. It's such a big game that the Tuscaloosa News is sending our friend Anna Snyder down to Saraland to cover the game, which is awesome. So can't wait to hear how that one goes. But out of those three, Gary, like what else strikes you?
I mean, I'll say this: if I'm one of these college coaches that's out recruiting on these Friday nights, I mean, Alabama and Auburn obviously have an in-state game this weekend against each other, but you're picking a game to go to, where you're checking in on guys, or you're recruiting in-state, that kind of thing. Where do you go? Like, like, if you're, Alabama is playing at Auburn, so like, are you going to Saraland and watching Ryan Williams and whoever from Hillcrest? Are you making the trip to Alex City to maybe check in on if you're an Auburn coach? Are you coming to check on Malcolm Simmons and whoever at Pike Road? Are you that Parker Gadsden City game has dudes everywhere, especially on Parker's squad. But Dre Kirkpatrick Jr.'s over there at Gadsden City making plays. Where do you go? That's what I would want to know. If you're one of these top recruiters, on Hugh Freeze's staff or on Nick Saban's staff, and you're able to go to one of these Friday night quarterfinal games, what sideline are you going to stand on Friday? Where would you go? If you're, put on an Alabama or Auburn gear, what game are you going to recruit at this Friday night?
Well, it depends on if you are trying to impress commits or secure recruits.
Let's say they're all uncommitted.
If they're all uncommitted, you're going to the Saraland Hillcrest game.
Yeah,
because the Saraland combination of KJ Lacey and
Ryan Williams.
Yeah. But at the same time, I mean, you mentioned Alabama's playing at Auburn. I mean, Benjamin Russell's on the way. It's literally on the way. So, and Pike Road's Malik Blockton, defensive lineman, is committed to Auburn. So, 6A is going to be quite fun. But let's wrap this by talking a little bit about the 7A stuff. We talked about Hewitt-Thompson. The state championship game, Wednesday, December the 6th at Bryant-Denny Stadium in Tuscaloosa. One of Hewitt-Trussville or Thompson will be there, and they will face one of Central Phoenix City or Mary Montgomery. MGM's had a dream season. We've talked about it in previous shows. Senior quarterback, elite defense. They had to come up with some magic to win over Enterprise last week. Gary, I think you believe that magic runs out this week against Central, who is just operating at an unbelievable level on both sides of the ball.
I think so. I mean, I obviously haven't seen either of these teams in person. I know our buddy Jeff has probably, I think, seen MGM, and you saw Central months ago at Hewitt-Trussville. I mean, just you're having to go to Central. They're on a mission. I think they're the better team. Mary Montgomery, while there's a lot to be said for getting in the playoffs and playing games like a 21-13 over Dothan, and then scoring 13 points in the last 5.5, 6 minutes to beat Enterprise 13-10. But you're not going to be able to do that against a Central Phoenix City, because regardless of how good your defense is, Central Phoenix City has dudes, and they're gonna score some points. I mean, they put up 49 on an Auburn defense that's pretty good. So, I don't know that it's necessarily going to be like 42-7 necessarily. I could certainly see it, but I think Central's just the better team, and I think they're on a collision course with whoever comes out of Thompson Hewitt-Trussville.
We shall see. All right, Gary, go get you some really, really good Thanksgiving food. Your opinion is probably shaped by people not giving you the best of the best. If you had elite Thanksgiving food, then it would be a different story.
I am giving your phone number to all of my aunts and uncles.
Well, if they want to prepare Thanksgiving meals for me, I'm not going to turn that down. So, all right, we will be on a sideline Friday night, 6A quarters, 7A semis. It's going to be a lot of fun. We will know the 7A state championship matchup in just a few more days or hours, depending on when you're listening to this. So get ready. Stay tuned. I'm at Kyle Parmley on Twitter. Gary is at Gary A. Lloyd. Follow us for all kinds of random clips, thoughts, stories, videos, whatever. It's like the other night when I had to just sit down and post a video because I didn't know what else to do with all the information that I had just absorbed walking to the car after the Vestavia Thompson game. So it'll be a lot of fun. Thanks for following. Thanks for listening. We will hopefully catch up with you again next week with a few more games to talk about. So safe travels, Gary. Appreciate you joining us. We'll catch you next time.